Chapter 44. Detective Marcus Reynolds was slouched over his desk, his eyes bloodshot from the countless hours he spent scrutinizing the evidence they gathered on the Illuminated Order. As he sifted through the latest batch of intercepted communications, a particular message caught his eye. It was encrypted, but after running it through the decryption software, the contents made his stomach churn. The message contained detailed information about Jade and David's movements, their plans, and their next steps. But what made Reynolds' blood boil was that this information could only have come from someone within their trusted circle. With a growing sense of dread, he dug deeper, cross-referencing names and dates, searching for any clue that might lead him to the identity of the traitor. Buried deep within a sea of data, he found it. An email, sent from a secure server traced back to the Illuminated Order's network. And there, in plain text, was a name he never expected to see. Dr. Sophia Ramirez. Reynolds stared at the name on the screen. I can't believe this. Dr. Ramirez, the brilliant academic who'd been their guide and ally, the one who provided them with insights into the workings of secret societies. She'd been there from the beginning, earning their trust and leading them through the shadows. But now, the truth was in front of him. She'd been feeding information to the Illuminated Order all along, using her position of trust to undermine every move. A sudden tightness filled his chest. He reached for his phone and dialed Jade's number. When she answered, her voice was thick with sleep. He barely managed to choke out the words. "Jade, it's Dr. Ramirez. She's a mole. She's been working for the Order this whole time." The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. Jade finally spoke. "Are you sure?" "I have the proof right here. We need to move fast before she realizes we're onto her." "Meet us at the safe house in an hour," Jade said. "We'll figure out our next move." Reynolds hung up the phone. He stared down at his palms like they held the answers, his thoughts scrambling, trying to figure out why. Dr. Ramirez, the one person they trusted implicitly, was working against them all along. The depth of her deception knew no bounds. He gathered his files and headed out into the night. As he drove through the quiet streets, he thought about how long Dr. Ramirez had been deceiving them, how much damage she'd already done. When he arrived at the safe house, Jade and David were already there. They pored over the evidence, piecing together the extent of Dr. Ramirez's betrayal. It was clear she'd been manipulating them from the start, steering their investigation while feeding critical information to the Order. She used her expertise and knowledge to keep them one step behind, allowing the Order to stay ahead of their every move. It was a bitter pill to swallow, but they had no choice but to confront her and uncover the full extent of her treachery. Confronting Dr. Ramirez would be a dangerous gambit, but they couldn't let her betrayal go unanswered. They had to stop her before she could do more damage, before the Illuminated Order could use her inside knowledge to thwart their efforts once and for all. In the safe house, Jade, David, and Reynolds stared at each other in silence. They'd been betrayed by one of their own, but they wouldn't let that stop them. Chapter 45. As Jade, David, and Detective Reynolds entered Dr. Ramirez's office, the once welcoming space now felt like a trap, the walls closing in on them with each passing moment. Dr. Ramirez sat behind her desk, her expression inscrutable, her eyes held an emotion they couldn't quite place. Jade was the first to break the silence. "How could you?" she said, slamming her hands down on the desk. "We trusted you, and all this time, you've been working for them?" Dr. Ramirez's lips curved into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Trust is a luxury in this game, my dear. You, of all people, should know that by now." David stepped forward. "We've seen the evidence, Dr. Ramirez. We know about your communication with the Order. You've been feeding them information about our every move." "Evidence can be fabricated, Mr. Montgomery. Surely your CIA training taught you that much." Reynolds shook his head. "Cut the shit, Dr. Ramirez. We've traced the emails back to your private server. There's no denying it anymore. You're working for the Order." For a moment, Dr. Ramirez said nothing, her eyes drifting to the window and the world beyond. Then, with a sigh, she turned back to face them. "You have no idea what you've stumbled into," she said. The Illuminated Order is more than just a secret cabal. It's a force that has shaped the course of human history for centuries. Jade's eyes widened. What are you talking about? Dr. Ramirez rose from her seat, her movements graceful and purposeful as she approached the towering bookshelf that lined the walls of her office. Her fingers traced the spines of the ancient tomes, each one a repository of the Order's secrets. The Illuminated Order has been the unseen force guiding the course of human history since the days of the Enlightenment, she said. We've been the invisible hand, the puppeteers pulling the strings of fate, shaping the world to our design. She turned to face Jade. You see, the Order understands that true power lies not in the spotlight, but in the shadows. We've worked tirelessly to infiltrate every level of society, to place our agents in positions of influence and authority, where they can guide the course of events to our desired outcomes. Dr. Ramirez paused, her eyes distant as if lost in the annals of history. In politics, we've been the kingmakers and the power behind the throne. Our members have whispered in the ears of presidents and prime ministers, have shaped the policies and laws that govern nations. From the halls of Congress to the corridors of Downing Street, our influence knows no boundary. She ran her fingers along the edge of a specific ancient volume, its pages yellowed with age. In the world of finance, we've been the hand that moves the markets, that shapes the ebb and flow of wealth and prosperity. Our investments and schemes have toppled governments and set the stage for the rise and fall of empires. The global economy is our plaything, a tool to be used in the service of our grand design. Dr. Ramirez's voice took on a note of pride, a hint of the fierce belief that drove the Order's actions. In science and technology, we've been the force behind the greatest advancements and innovations of the modern age, from the harnessing of electricity to the splitting of the atom, from the mapping of the human genome to the creation of artificial intelligence. Our members have been at the forefront of every great leap forward. She fixed Jade with a piercing stare, her eyes alight with a kind of messianic conviction. But perhaps our greatest achievement has been in the realm of culture and ideas. Through our control of the media, the arts, and education, we've shaped the fabric of human thought and have molded the beliefs and values that define the modern world. From the books that line the shelves of every library to the movies that play on every screen, our influence is felt in every corner of human experience. Dr. Ramirez's voice dropped to a whisper. The French Revolution, the rise of the Soviet Union, the dawn of the nuclear age. All of these moments were guided by the Illuminated Order, shaped to serve our purposes and further our goals. The world as you know it is a carefully constructed illusion. She stepped closer to Jade, her face a mask of cold determination. And now, as we stand on the brink of a new era, the Order is poised to take the final step. To usher in a world where our vision of enlightenment and progress reigns supreme. The pieces are in place, the stage is set, and soon the curtain will rise on a future that we alone have the power to shape. David's eyes narrowed. How long have you been working for them? Dr. Ramirez smiled. My family has served the Order for generations. It's a duty that's been passed down from parent to child, a sacred trust that cannot be broken. Detective Reynolds's hand rested on the butt of his gun. And the Grand Master? Who is he? Dr. Ramirez's eyes sparkled with a dangerous light. The Grand Master is the heart and soul of the Order, the one who guides us all. He's a man of immense power and influence, a visionary who sees beyond the petty concerns of nations and governments. Jade's heart pounded in her chest. It's him, isn't it? The man we saw at the ceremony in Switzerland, the one who performed the human sacrifice. Dr. Ramirez nodded, her expression solemn. Yes, that was the Grand Master. He's known by many names, but to the Order, he's simply the architect, the one who shapes the future of the world. David's hands clenched into fists. And you're just going to stand by and let him do this? Let the Order manipulate and control everything from the shadows? You still don't understand, do you? The Order is not some sinister force bent on destruction. We're the guardians of humanity, the ones who ensure the world keeps turning, no matter the cost. Jade's nostrils flared. No, Dr. Ramirez. What you're doing is wrong. You're taking away people's free will, their right to choose their own destiny. Dr. Ramirez's smile was sad, almost pitying. Free will is a myth, Jade. The Order knows this better than anyone. We're all just pawns in a much larger game, and it is our duty to play our parts, no matter how difficult they may be. Detective Reynolds' grip tightened on his gun. And what about the human sacrifice? Is that just another part of your grand plan? The sacrifice is a necessary evil, a reminder of the price that must be paid for the greater good. It's a burden the Grand Master bears, a cross he must carry, so others may be spared. Jade shook her head in a slow, back-and-forth sweep of denial. I can't believe I ever trusted you. Dr. Ramirez's eyes softened, a pained expression crossing her face. I never meant to hurt you, Jade. But you must understand, the Order's work is too important to be jeopardized. We have a duty to protect the world, no matter the cost. David's voice was cold, his eyes hard as flint. And what about the cost to the people you're supposed to be protecting? The lives that have been lost, the suffering that's been inflicted. The Order has always known that sacrifices must be made. It's a burden we bear, a price we pay so that humanity may continue to thrive. Detective Reynolds shook his head. You're not protecting humanity, Dr. Ramirez. You're enslaving it. You may see it that way, Detective. But the truth is, the world needs the Order. Without us, chaos would reign, and all that we've built would be destroyed. We're going to stop you, Jade said. We're going to expose the truth and bring the Order to justice, no matter what it takes. You can try, Jade. But the Order is too powerful, too entrenched to be stopped by the likes of you. You're nothing but ants, trying to topple a mountain. Chapter 46. Jade, David, and Detective Reynolds stood around the table in the safe house. Dr. Ramirez's information was a gold mine, secrets that unlocked the true scope of the Order's influence. The computer screen was flooded with new data, an array of financial transactions, coded messages, and geopolitical maneuverings painted a chilling picture of the Order's global reach. Jade pointed to a series of graphs and charts on the screen. Look at this, she said. The Order's been manipulating financial markets for decades, orchestrating crashes and booms to line their pockets and consolidate power. It's not just the markets. David's finger traced a line of code that scrolled across the screen. They've been funneling money into wars and conflicts around the world, stoking the flames of chaos to destabilize entire regions. It's a classic tactic of the powerful, Reynolds said. Create a problem, then offer yourself as the solution. The Order's been doing it for centuries, and no one's been the wiser. Jade couldn't believe what she was seeing. The Arab Spring, the Ukraine conflict, the rise of populist movements in Europe and the US, it's all connected. David stumbled on an encrypted file. When the decryption software was finished working its magic, his jaw dropped. Project Zephyr, he said. Looks like a plan for a coordinated cyber attack on the world's power grids. They're trying to create a global blackout to plunge entire countries into chaos. But why? What could they possibly hope to gain from something like that? Jade asked. Control, Reynolds said. In the event of a global crisis, the Order positions itself as the savior, the only ones capable of restoring order. They consolidate their power, and the world is left forever changed in their image. We have to stop them, David said. Jade nodded. We'll need help. Allies who can work with us to counter the Order's moves, to expose their plans before it's too late. I might know some people, Reynolds said. Ex-intelligence, hacktivist groups, people who've been fighting from the darkness for years. David's eyes met Jade's. They were aware of the risks and dangers that lay ahead. As they searched deeper into the files, the true magnitude of the Illuminated Order's plan began to take shape. It was a history of deceit and manipulation that stretched back centuries, a conspiracy so vast and intricate that it defied belief. The Order orchestrated countless wars and revolutions, toppling governments and shaping the course of human events. They infiltrated the highest rankings of power, from the halls of government to the boardrooms of multinational corporations, their influence spreading like a cancer across the globe. And now, with the advent of new technologies and the rise of global interconnectedness, the Order's power only grew. They controlled the flow of information, manipulating the masses through propaganda and disinformation. They held the keys to the world's economies, using their wealth to bend nations to their will. As Jade and her team pored over the files, it dawned on them. The Order's ultimate goal was not just power for its own sake, but something far more diabolical. They sought to create a new world order, a global totalitarian regime that would enslave humanity under the guise of peace and prosperity. And as the days passed, they grew closer to achieving their twisted vision. Chapter 47. The conference room was bathed in a cool, diffused light, the floor-to-ceiling windows offering a stunning panoramic view of the city skyline. Around the polished glass table sat the junior members of the Illuminated Order, their faces a study in concentration and concern. At the head of the table, Victoria Sterling's ice-blue eyes searched the faces of her colleagues. "Project Zephyr is entering its critical phase," she said. "But we're facing a new and unexpected threat. The interference of Jade Rose, David Montgomery, and Detective Marcus Reynolds." Cassandra Blackwell, the Order's rising star in public relations, frowned, her perfectly manicured fingers drumming a staccato rhythm on the table. "They've been dedicated in their pursuit of the truth," she said. "Jade, in particular, has proven to be an imposing adversary. Her investigative skills and determination are impressive." Jameson Shaw, the tech prodigy with a razor-sharp intellect, leaned back in his chair. "They're getting too close," he warned. "If they manage to uncover the details of Project Zephyr, it could jeopardize everything we've worked for. The economic chaos, the social upheaval, it would all be for nothing." Victoria's lips pursed in a thin line. "Which is why we need to take action, and fast. We can't allow them to derail our plans, not when we're so close to achieving our goals." She tapped a button on the console before her, and a holographic display sprang to life in the center of the table. It was a detailed outline of intricate connections and data points, each one representing a key figure or organization in the Order's network of influence. "We have assets in place," Victoria continued, her finger tracing the glowing lines of the hologram. "Contacts within the media, the police force, even the FBI. We need to leverage every resource at our disposal to discredit and neutralize this threat." "I can handle the media angle," Cassandra offered. "A few well-placed rumors, some incriminating evidence planted at the right moment. We can destroy their credibility. Paint them as nothing more than conspiracy theorists and attention seekers." Jameson's fingers flew across the screen of his tablet. "I can dig into their digital lives, uncover any skeletons in their closets. Everyone has secrets, weaknesses that can be exploited. We just need to find the right pressure points." "Excellent," Victoria said. "But we need to go further. Detective Reynolds, in particular, poses a significant threat. His position within the department gives him access and resources that could cause us real damage." She paused, her eyes sweeping over the faces of her colleagues. "I want him neutralized, by any means necessary. If he won't back down, if he won't see reason, then we'll have to remove him from the equation, permanently." Chapter 49. President Adrian Blackwell stood by the window in the Oval Office, his back to the room, his posture rigid with contained rage. Senator Jonathan Bishop sat in one of the plush armchairs, his face a mask of apprehension and unease. The president turned, his eyes blazing with a fury that radiated from every pore of his body. He stalked towards the senator, his footsteps heavy and deliberate on the thick carpet. "What the fuck is going on, Bishop?" he growled. "I thought you had the order under control, that you could keep them in line." Senator Bishop shifted in his seat, his hands gripping the armrests. "Mr. President, I assure you, I'm doing everything in my power to manage the situation. The order is simply eager to see progress on our shared goals." President Blackwell slammed his fist on the desk, the sudden violence of the action causing Bishop to flinch. "Eager? Is that what you call it? They're breathing down my fucking neck, Bishop. Every day, it's another demand, another threat, another reminder of the leverage they hold over me." He leaned in closer, his face inches from the senator's, his breath hot and heavy with the scent of whiskey. "I'm the President of the United States, goddammit. I won't be pushed around by a bunch of shadow-dwelling puppeteers who think they can control the world from behind the scenes." Senator Bishop swallowed hard. "I understand your frustration, Mr. President. But the order's influence is vast, their reach extending into every corner of global power. We have to tread carefully, to maintain the delicate balance." "Fuck the balance," President Blackwell roared, his voice jumping off the walls of the Oval Office. "I'm tired of being their lapdog, jumping through hoops to appease their every whim. I was elected to lead this nation, not to serve as a figurehead for some fucking power-hungry sociopaths." He grabbed Bishop by the lapels of his suit jacket, yanking him forward until their noses were almost touching. "You listen to me very carefully, Jonathan. You get the order under control, and you do it now. I want them off my back, out of my business, and out of my fucking sight." The senator's eyes widened, a bead of sweat trickling down his temple. I'll do my best, Mr. President. But you have to understand, the order's plans are already in motion. Project Zephyr, the global economic reset. These things have been in the works for years. They won't just abandon them because— "I don't give a fuck about their plans," the president snarled, his grip tightening on Bishop's lapels. "If they don't back off, if they don't give me room to breathe, I'll rain holy hell down on them. I'll expose their secrets, dismantle their power structure, and burn their precious order to the fucking ground." He shoved Bishop back into the chair, his chest heaving. "And as for you, Senator, if you can't get them in line, then I'll make your life a fucking nightmare. I'll destroy your career, your reputation, everything you've ever worked for. You'll be lucky to get a job scrubbing toilets when I'm done with you." Senator Bishop's face drained of color. "Please, Mr. President, let's not be hasty. I'm sure we can find a way to resolve this, to reach a compromise that satisfies all parties involved." President Blackwell's laughter was a bitter, mirthless sound. "Compromise? There is no compromise with the devil, Bishop. There's only submission or damnation." He turned back to the window, his eyes fixed on the distant lights of the city. "Get the fuck out of my sight, Senator, and pray you can clean up this mess before it's too late, for all our sakes." As Bishop stumbled from the room, President Blackwell remained at the window, his shoulders slumped with the weight of the burden he carried. He had danced with the devil, made a bargain for power and influence he now feared would consume him whole. And as the shadows lengthened and the night deepened, he couldn't shake the feeling that reckoning was fast approaching. The bill for his sins was about to come due. In the halls of the White House, the most powerful man in the world stood alone, a prisoner of his own ambition, a puppet dancing on the strings of a master he could no longer control. Chapter 50. The rain fell in sheets over the city, the sound from the downpour mixed with the sirens and the rumble of traffic on the streets below. Jade stood in the center of her father's office, her hair plastered to her face and her clothes soaked through, the chill of the rain seeping into her bones. But the cold that gripped her was nothing compared to the icy dread that settled in the pit of her stomach. The sickening realization of the truth she uncovered about the man she once called her hero. Her father sat behind his desk, calm and composed, his eyes sparkling with a cold, calculating light. He'd always been a master of control, a man who could hide his true feelings behind his charm and charisma. But now, as Jade stared into those eyes, she could see the cracks in that facade, the fear and guilt that danced behind the mask. "I know everything, Dad," she said. "I know about your involvement with the Illuminated Order, about the things you've done in their name." Her father's jaw tightened, his fingers curling into fists on the desk before him. "Jade, you don't understand," he said. "The Order is not what you think it is. We're trying to create a better world, a world where everyone can live in peace and prosperity." Jade shook her head, warm tears stinging her eyes. A better world? By lying and manipulating, by sowing chaos and discord wherever you go? By planning to plunge the entire planet into darkness and disorder, just so you can seize control in the aftermath? The world is a messy, complicated place, Jade. Sometimes, sacrifices have to be made. The Order understands that, even if you don't. Jade's heart twisted in her chest, a pain that threatened to tear her apart from the inside out. She always looked up to her father, always seen him as a man of integrity and righteousness in a world that often seemed so dark and corrupt. But now, as she stared into his eyes and saw the cold, ruthless calculation that lurked behind them, she realized she never knew him at all. "Sacrifices," she said. "What about the people who'll suffer? The innocent lives that'll be lost? What about the freedoms and rights that'll be trampled underfoot, all in the name of your vision of a perfect world?" "Jade, listen to me," he said. "You have a choice to make here and now. You can join us, become a part of something greater than yourself, or you can continue to fight against us and face the consequences of your actions." Jade's breath got caught in her throat. She'd always known her father was a powerful man. He had connections and influence that stretched far beyond the borders of their family. But to hear him speak so casually of consequences, of the price she would pay for standing up for what she believed in. "I can't do that, Dad," she said. "I can't be a part of something that goes against everything I believe in, everything you taught me to stand for. If you truly loved me, if you truly cared about what was right, you would see that." For a moment, her father's eyes softened, but then, just as quickly, the mask slipped back into place, the cold, hard lines of his features settling into a look of grim determination. "I'm sorry, Jade," he said. "But I have a duty to the Order, a responsibility that goes beyond my personal feelings. If you can't see that, if you choose to stand against us, then you're no longer my daughter." The words hit Jade like a punch to the face, a numbing pain that tore through her heart and left her gasping for breath. Her relationship with her father was strained. There were secrets and lies that lurked beneath the surface of their family. But to hear him say those words, to know he was willing to cast her aside so easily. "Then I guess I never really was," she said. "Because the father I knew, the man I looked up to, he would never have been a part of something so twisted, so evil. He would have fought against it, just like I'm going to do." She turned to leave. But as she reached for the door, her father's voice stopped her in her tracks. "Walk away now, Jade, and you'll be signing your own death warrant," he said. "The Order doesn't take kindly to those who oppose us, and will stop at nothing to protect our interests. If you continue down this path, you'll suffer the consequences, and there will be no one left to save you." Chapter 51. The opulent boardroom was shrouded in an air of secrecy, the heavy oak doors sealed tight against the prying eyes of the world beyond. The junior members of the Illuminated Order sat around the polished mahogany table. At the head of the table, Victoria Sterling leaned back in her high-backed leather chair, her ice-blue eyes scanning the room with a calculated intensity. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a severe bun, accentuating the sharp angles of her face and the predatory gleam in her eyes. A holographic display flickered to life, projecting the names of senators and council members on the walls, like pawns on a chessboard. Victoria traced her fingers over the holographic interface, her voice resonating with authority. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said, her eyes fixed on the name Senator Jonathan Bishop. "The time has come for us to tighten our grip on the levers of power. The pieces are in place, and the stage is set for us to make our move. Jameson Shaw looked up from his tablet, his fingers moving across the screen with a speed that bordered on superhuman. I've just intercepted a series of encrypted communications between Senator Bishop's office and the Pentagon, he said. It seems our dear president is getting cold feet about the new defense budget. Victoria's lips curved into a razor-thin smile. Then it's time we reminded him of where his loyalties lie, she said. Olivia, my dear, I believe this is your area of expertise. Olivia nodded. Leave it to me. I have just the right pressure points to push to bring the president back in line. She reached for her phone, her fingers dancing across the screen as she composed a message. A few whispers in the right ears, a few promises of future favors, and our dear president will be singing a very different tune by the end of the week. Victoria nodded. Excellent work, Olivia. And what of our friends in the House and Senate? Are they falling into line as expected? Jameson looked up from his tablet once more. Like a well-oiled machine, he said. The new legislation we drafted is already making its way through committee, and our allies in the media are primed and ready to sing its praises to the masses. Victoria leaned forward, her elbows resting on the polished wood of the table. And the opposition? She asked. Neutralized, Olivia answered. A few well-placed scandals, a few unfortunate accidents, and the path is clear for us to push through our agenda unopposed. Victoria leaned back in her chair, a triumphant smile spreading across her face. Well done, my friends, she said. The Illuminated Order has never been stronger, and our grip on the reins of power has never been more secure. She raised her glass of scotch, the liquid shining in the dim light of the boardroom. To the Order, she said, and to the bright future that awaits us all. The others raised their glasses in turn. As they drank to their own dark triumph, the junior members of the Illuminated Order knew their reign had only just begun. The world itself would soon tremble at their feet. They were the chosen few, the anointed ones, and the power they wielded was beyond the comprehension of mere mortals. With that kind of power, they would reshape the world in their image, a dark and terrible vision of a future where they alone held sway. The boardroom thrummed, a dark and pulsing force that seemed to emanate from the walls themselves. As the junior members of the Order set to work, their minds and hearts consumed with the joy of their own dark purpose, they knew nothing and no one could stand in their way. And heaven help anyone who dared to go against them, who dared to challenge their dark and terrible reign. For they would be crushed like insects beneath the heel of a merciless and unforgiving God, their screams of agony and despair lost in the howling void of eternity. Chapter 52. Senator Jonathan Bishop strode across the manicured lawn, his face a mask of grim determination as he made his way towards the waiting car. He just finished a tense meeting with the other members of the Order's inner circle, a gathering that left him shaken to his core. The Order's plans were moving forward at a breakneck pace, and the senator found himself questioning the wisdom of their actions, the morality of the path they had chosen. But there was no turning back, no way to extricate himself from the lies and deceit he helped to spin. He was in too deep, bound by oaths and loyalties that stretched back generations. As he reached for the car door, movement caught his eye. A shadow seemed to detach itself from the darkness and lunge towards him with blinding speed. The senator's eyes widened, his hand scrabbling for the gun at his waist. The man slammed into him with the force of a freight train, a gloved hand clamping over his mouth as a blade flashed in the moonlight. The senator felt a pain in his chest, a warm, wet sensation spreading across his shirt as the knife plunged into his flesh again and again. He tried to struggle, to fight back against his attacker, but his limbs felt heavy and sluggish, his vision blurring at the edges as the life drained from his body. The last thing he saw before the darkness claimed him was a pair of cold, merciless eyes staring down at him from behind a black mask. Chapter 54. The cold rain fell in a mournful cadence as the attendees gathered beneath the gloomy clouds, black umbrellas shielding them from the damp weather. Senator Jonathan Bishop's funeral was a somber affair, his casket draped in the American flag, a symbol of the political legacy he left behind. Mourners whispered condolences, their faces full of grief, while a sea of dark suits and dresses surrounded the grave. At the back of the crowd, in the darkness, the junior members of the Illuminated Order watched with detached expressions. Miss Victoria Sterling, her eyes hidden behind dark sunglasses, stood beside Mr. Jameson Shaw, who examined the proceedings with an emotionless stare. Their presence, while paying respects, held an undertone of cold calculation. As the casket was lowered into the ground, Victoria whispered to Jameson, "Make sure he's gone. We can't afford any loose ends. His demise opens doors we hadn't anticipated," she said. "The vacuum of power needs to be filled, and we must ensure our interests are safeguarded." Jameson nodded. "The time has come to solidify our hold on power. The president must be made aware of our expectations. He's vulnerable. We have an opportunity to tighten our grip further." Victoria looked down on the casket. "We'll ensure that the president dances to our tune. Senator Bishop's death is but a stepping stone to greater influence." With grim determination, the junior members of the Illuminated Order formulated their plans, their voices devoid of emotion as they discussed the fate of the nation. In their world, sentimentality held no place, only cold-blooded ambition and ruthless determination to achieve their goals at any cost.